You know, when I was younger, I prepped my daughter for this because she didn't know any of this before I started writing this. I was a juvenile delinquent, a high school dropout. I don't have a high school diploma or a college degree. I was an amateur pharmacologist. I did and sold drugs. I specialized in herbal remedies. I was an atheist. Sure, there was no God. I got sent to juvenile detention center for armed robbery in the state of Ohio. Apparently it's against the law. You know, laws are broken every day. But if you're caught, the punishments are pretty severe. I read a book in juvenile and detention center by a guy by the name of Gene Neal. He was sentenced to 50 years for armed robbery. See the connection? He became a Christian and then had a long-time prison ministry. I read a book of his. He was into stock car racing before there was a NASCAR. It was a really big deal on his college campus. Before this, I was a 2.5-pack-a-day cigarette smoker. One of the reasons that people smoke so much is because they have to have something in their hands. They have to have something to do with their hands. That's the type of smoker I was. Realize that nicotine is the most addictive substance on the planet. Scale of 1 to 100. 18 is chocolate. 25 is coffee. Cocaine comes in the 60s. Crack cocaine in the 90s. But at 100 is nicotine. Once you've smoked, what it does is set up a set of acetylcholine, I know I'm getting really geeky here, receptors in your brain. And when you don't smoke, those receptors are empty and they just crave it. I don't have to tell you, it's bad for you. At some point in the book I said, you know what, God, I don't really believe in you. But if you exist, tomorrow I won't want a cigarette. I thought I was done. God's not going to answer my prayer because he's not there. I think one of the reasons he did, not because of what I said when I prayed, it's because I was really looking, really searching for him. At 11:30 a.m. the next morning, I was on my way to lunch. I realized I hadn't had a cigarette and didn't want one. Boom. Just boom. Changed everything about my life.
And Peter did what we're going to ask some of you to do. In 3 minutes, he shared his testimony. And yours is not going to be that because you weren't there at the time, but yours simply, hey, here is what life was like before. And last week, Stephen shared his testimony. And mine, I've never even thought about how do you sit and tell someone your whole life story and condense it down to 3 minutes? Because I don't know about you, but I think my life is pretty exciting, so apparently I'm the only one. All right, but I'm like, how do you condense that? But the truth is, for me personally, I know growing up, I didn't have the greatest life. I didn't have the worst life. But I know one thing that I was desperately looking for. I was looking for love. I just didn't know it at the time. I looked for it through hanging out with people I shouldn't have hung out with. I looked for it through drugs. I looked for it through sex. I looked for it through anyone that would show me any kind of attention. And even when I realized I read this book that talked about the fact that Jesus was coming back, and even though my mom had taken me to every kind of church you can imagine, not in one of them did I ever hear the gospel preached or hear that Jesus was coming back. And even when I went and said, hey, well, if Jesus is coming back, I've got to, let me see if this is real. And as I went and looked through Scripture, I was like, wow, how can anyone read this and then say, well, I still deny that God exists? But even then, I was at the place where a lot of people are. I know a little bit about the book, but I was missing the relationship. And only when I got to a point where I was willing to say, okay, God, if you're real, instead of me looking for love in groups of people or in sex or in drugs or in money or in all these things I was chasing after, if you show me how much you love me, I'll be yours for life. And only then did I truly step into a relationship with God and never had to look anywhere else for that kind of love. And some of you, you have stories that are more amazing. Some are like Stephen's, where, you did crazy things or wild things or went to jail or did all kind of stuff or had people. Did he say someone threatened to beat him up? Yeah. Because if you're not living out like the Bible, I'm going to come beat you up. But maybe whatever your story is, here's where I was before I came into this relationship with God. Here's how I came into this relationship with God. And here's what being in a relationship with God, here's how that has changed my life. And it doesn't matter, because I talk to people every day that say, this isn't real. How could this be real? How could that be real? I got to tell you, I can't feel, touch, I can't show you that my wife, Christy, loves me. I can't give you any physical representation of that, but I know it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I can't take your hand and put it on God and show you, here's God, touch him, feel him. But in the same way, I know he loves me beyond a shadow of a doubt. There is never, ever, ever anything that will make me believe that God doesn't exist, because I've experienced his love.